That's what I had to do to my notes prior to the session. All things considered, I think I did a pretty good job this week on putting it all together, and I'm not even really sure that they noticed. That's a win. Welcome, adventurers and fellow world builders. My name is Yadro, and this is Yadro Gaming. Despite reaching out to them before we actually ran the session, I set out a survey. You can see the results here. I asked them what they wanted to accomplish, gave them, 5 or 6 options. They went through, they voted, came up with an order of them, and we decided, hey, we're going to proceed here, and we're going to go look for Darty as our main focus. We're going to look into the wine a little bit and see what we can find out of that. And it was almost immediately into the session where I threw a couple cooks at them to try to accomplish that task, and they decided that they had better things to do. This was the second session that we've had together, and I had to freestyle the entire thing because what they said they wanted to do a couple days before the session actually started, they decided to go in a completely different direction, which is fine. I want them to do what they want to do, and I have some experience in doing this and thinking on the fly. And if you refer to this video, I explain how I build encounters on the fly using a couple different websites, and I had to utilize those in this session. My players probably would have been fine if I told them, like, hey guys, this isn't what you decided to do today. Like, I had a whole thing planned, like, let's look into the disappearance of Darty, head back to the mill and do things that way. But instead, I just rolled with it and let it happen, and we got a really good session out of it. If you are caught flat-footed, there's nothing that burns time in a session quite like fighting. So I threw 2 different encounters in them that were a little bit complicated and had some moving parts to them. And that really ate up a good chunk of the session where they felt like they were accomplishing something, they were having fun, they were doing some combat, which some combat-heavy players enjoyed, and there were some roleplay aspects as well, so they kind of got a little bit of everything that they wanted. So my plan this week was to have them meet the marshal of the town, the guy that keeps the law and order. His name is Corrigan Sledge. He's this big, imposing paladin that rides around on a Pegasus. He's just a really cool guy, really kind of chill, sort of Western accent on him. And he's supposed to just kind of get to know him a little bit, kind of get what they were thinking and feeling, kind of just get a gauge on where they were at. So he's also a great source of information as he's the guy about town. He wants to know what they're up to, kind of whose side are they going to be on, quote unquote. And he was also going to be something of a quest giver moving forward. So one of the things he mentioned was there's a really dangerous beast in the area, and he would recommend that it's like outside of their purview, and they should avoid it. Because he doesn't want anyone to end up being killed. If they ran into it, he told them it's best just to run. So I was trying to foreshadow this as much as I could, that this thing had like glowing, intimidating eyes. It stood well above any man in the region, even him as a Goliath. When anyone kind of smells this really foul smell coming from the woods, they know to get out of there because this beast is somewhere close. So there's these random wildfires breaking out in the woods, and the party doesn't really know what is causing them. But due to those fires, this creature's been flushed out, and it's now disrupting the trade a little bit. And it's to the northeast of town, and that would be the direction that they're heading this session. They said they wanted to investigate the Darty situation, so I had a whole elaborate plan set up where they were going to go to the mill, get inside of it, check it out, meet whoever or whatever is inside of there, possibly have a big encounter breakout in there. There was 2 or 3 minor magic items that were located in there as well. And then from there, depending on how that encounter went, would branch off several different paths. With Pepper, with the Marshal, with the Caimans themselves, as they kind of broke into the mill to accomplish this thing based on whatever they found. And all of that was going to start off with someone at night seeing a robed, like hooded figure leaving from the top of the mill, after turning on a light on the top of it and then disappearing into the night. I thought that 9 would be interested in giving chase to them because he's been looking for his friend Gil. He's been looking for a rogue to make contact with, and it's all he's been talking about and mentioning. And when I placed it in front of them, I was shocked that he just said, okay, I'm just going to let them go.
I would want to go check out. Nothing crazy, just checking out the mill, snooping around, poking my head in.
Give me a perception check as you get close.
24.
As you come up on the mill, you watch as like through some of the cracks in the exterior, there like a bright light comes on the inside, and light is like shining out through some of the cracks in the building. And you watch as there's a figure on top of the roof that sprints across it and jumps off on another rooftop.
Did somebody sneaky like me did something?
I'm just going to let them run into the night, into the city, and I'm not going to give chase because I respect other rogues. So I pretty much tore up my notes at that point, and I said, okay, I guess we're going to be freestyling this entire session. And that's exactly what I had to do. So after 9 just kind of watched the rogue go away, he came back to the party, and I think he told him a little bit about what he saw, but he didn't really press on it, didn't say he was interested in it. And the party just said, well, we might as well go ahead and take the escort mission because there's not much else to do here. So immediately, the survey I sent out, they said they wanted to look into the disappearance of Darty. They barely scratched the surface of it. They just looked in on the mill from the outside and then just say, okay, I guess we did our job. And they decided to take an escort mission out of town. So that's what we did. So they went back to meet Johnny, came in, and they had two options of a path that they could take. They could either go up to Browood to get some lumber, or they could head to Muktuk and drop off some grains. And so I was giving them a choice there, where they could either head to the southern part of the map or the northern part of the map, and they opted to go to Browood in the northern part. So there was different kind of payments for each of those that the party got up front, so they could buy some supplies along the way, and then they set out from town. Path heading north to Browood was dangerous. They were making checks to see if they would hit any random encounters, and they didn't hit any on the first day. So they had set up camp. Mongo had decided he was going to train in the woods. So he was just like kind of punching trees and just doing some, dodging and weaving and punching a tree, breaking off some of the bark. And he's trying to like commune with these fists and reaching out to Ball, the god of murder. As he was hitting this tree and making these like knocking sounds, he heard like replica knocking sound from the woods. So he stopped and he heard that, like he perceived it with a check. And he said, oh, it's probably nothing. And then just shook it off for the night. I have been to the Hocking Hills area in southeast Ohio, and Sasquatch is a big deal down there. People love Yetis. Like this is in the back of my mind. It's like, oh my gosh, he's setting me up for this thing. So he's knocking on these trees. He's hearing knocking in the woods. Like there's a chance he's going to end up summoning this thing.
Then we
I'm
got
gonna
3
practice
watches.
fighting trees again.
Oh, you weirdos.
You hear
Draft.
almost like your hit echoed. You hear it in the woods.
Sure, it's nothing. Good about it.
So they make it the next day of traveling. They decide to camp once again. I think the weather is starting to turn a little bit rainy at this point. There's like a thunderstorm rolls in. I rolled on a random table for it and hit that. So I think he's training again, and he makes more knocking sounds on a tree. And he hears a much closer, familiar knocking sound. And then this stench fills the area. So everyone scatters. They hide under anything that they can get into. They have a little tent set up. In the cart on the outside, you hear very similar cadence and beat to when you were hitting the tree.
I start
It is really, really loud.
hitting the rabbit.
And this giant Sasquatch abomination rolls into town. And I homebrewed this creature a little bit, but he was a very, very high CR, like CR 8 or 9, which is super lethal for a party. But I mean, there is 6 of them, and they are level 2 at this point. So it's like, well, maybe it'll just come in, knock one out, drag them into the woods, and then the party can go fetch them. Keep in mind, I'm doing this on the fly, but I had an idea for what this monster would be prior to the session starting. So the creature rolls in, and they immediately gang up on it. They don't take Corrigan Sledge's advice, and they say, look, we're going to fight this thing. And they just surrounded it, and they just started beating it down. They're throwing silvery barbs out, just basically controlling the situation. And I only think it landed like 2 or 3 hits total, but it was hitting for like 20-ish damage, which is enough to like drop a character down. And I think every one of its glares failed. The characters resisted it, so they couldn't even really see what this creature did. One interesting situation that came out of it was after they finally beat it and knocked it out, and a couple of them went down and got brought back up and down and up. The creature, like I rolled a d4 to see which direction it would fall, just near gargantuan size, and it tipped over and fell on Ms. Candy. So she got crushed by this thing. So the party was trying to get her out from under there because it was enough to knock her out, and she's going to be making death saving throws. So it was like this whole thing of like, oh, we don't have a strength-based character. Everyone's really weak. They're trying to lift this 2,000 or 3,000 pound body off of top of her while she's being crushed and taking like failed death saving throws. They couldn't see her to revive her. So it was just a really chaotic scene that was kind of playing out really interestingly as they tried to just get her out of there. They were able to succeed in doing so. They were able to cut off some parts from this beast that they thought would be worthwhile of keeping for later, and they were able to make it through the night. So that took up a good part of the session. After they left town, they handled this monster, and we had a little bit of a ways to go. I really wanted them to get outside of Browood if they were going to do this, so we could handle that in the next session. So they went through another trip, rolling on some random tables, and they had another encounter in the night. They succeed in resolving a short rest. They didn't quite get to their long rest. So after they had like slept a while, they switched shifts, and then someone noticed that there was basically like a dome around them where they were. And as they were like looking out into the darkness, like they saw it slowly creeping in and getting closer and closer. So they woke up the whole party. Everyone was kind of looking around, and a combat ensued where everybody rolled initiative. They were assassin vines, but they had creeped in, and this is that black killer Kudzu that we had decided was in this region during the quiet year. So it was all of them versus 3 of these things, and they had every round they were getting tighter and tighter to where they were just going to like grapple and crush the party. So there was an added bit of intensity to this, but they also had an ability like where they could hit the party with a vine, grasp them and pull them closer, so that even some of the ranged characters were like pulled dangerously close. And during this, Miss Candy again was like being dropped unconscious, and people were trying to cut her free and heal her. But it was a really bad stretch for Miss Candy. The party was able to take care of all of the vines, cut them down. They spoke with them at one point. I think someone had to speak with plants, or they were able to like give them a message in Sylvan, telling them like, leave us alone, and we'll leave you alone. We don't want to do this anymore. And they started to retreat. And as they were retreating, 9 couldn't understand what they were saying.
Do what you said.
Candy is chucked just in the middle of the floor, and the vines recede.
Ooh, nice.
I would like
follow up with a.
I would like to use my reaction.
Yeah, what are we gonna do?
I'm gonna attack it.
What?
God damn it!
I didn't understand you!
Threw his dagger at them and killed the last of the vines. That dropped to the forest floor, and then the rest receded into the ceiling. So they definitely heard him and saw, perceived him doing that. So we'll see what kind of ramifications there are in the future. Well, there's like a little fight that broke out afterwards. I'm like, why did you do that? Like, they were retreating. We told them to leave us alone. And he's like, well, I didn't understand what they said. I don't know. I was just attacking these things that were attacking my friends. But that might come up later. We'll see. So that was pretty much session 2. The party went a little bit against what I was hoping for them to accomplish that session, but everything ended up okay. And put us in a really good spot for our 3rd session. And everybody had fun, so I had fun. Thanks for sticking around and watching the video. I'll see you on the next one. And remember, why be a player when you can be a god?